Welcome and thank you for joining me. This is Laurie of Laurie's Heirloom Sewing. Today I'm going to work on the McCalls Crafts number M4798 tote. We've already done the jacket and now I have all the pieces cut and we will be doing the tote. So for a little bit better view, there you have it. And on the reverse of this pattern, there we go. The lighting's a little off. Let's see if I can get it there. There aren't that many pieces for the tote bag, and it is just a simple matter of having the required fabric, which I did not. Fold this up and get that out of the way. So I made a piece of fabric for one or more of the pieces. I had to seam together pieces of leftover fabric that I had, but I felt like it would add to the somewhat shabby appearance of this tote. And I'm using the word shabby in a good way, not a bad way. So basically, let's just do this. What we have is we have an upper right back. So for the upper right back, which is just basically a square, you are going to cut one of your fabric. Now when you read this, fabric means what you want showing on the outside. Contrast means what you could have on the inside. So fabric is on the outside, contrast is on the inside, and the inner piece is what they're calling the underlining. They do not describe this in the pattern instructions. I don't want to say that they don't describe it, but after what I considered to be a careful examination of both pages of the instructions that were included in this pattern envelope, I did not see a key describing how to interpret this, this, and this. It might be intuitive to most people, but to some, especially a beginning sewist, that could be confusing. So the fabric is the outer, which is what you're looking at when you see the completed garment or tote bag. Contrast is what is basically the lining, what you're going to see on the inside, and the underlining is what goes between the two. So that is helpful when you're choosing which fabrics you want to use. So we have 1, 1, and 1. 1 fabric, 1 contrast, 1 underlining, for a total of 3 pieces of fabric. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so for the piece 21, that was piece 23, and I'm not doing this in any specific order, I'm just grabbing from the pile here. So for piece 21, the upper left back of the tote, we have 1 fabric, 1 contrast, and 1 underlining. And lest this be confusing, it states fabric cut 1, contrast 2, cut 1, underlining cut 1. Okay, for piece number, I think this was 22, yes. This is the right side of the tote. So they will have you cut 1 fabric, contrast 3, cut 1, and underlining cut 1. For the pocket, you will cut 1 fabric, 1 contrast 1, and underlining cut 1. I like that pocket size, it's good for a tote. And then for the final part of the bag, I haven't gotten to the strap yet, but we're going to do that last. So piece 20, pocket was 24, so piece 20 is the left side of the tote. So for fabric we need to cut 2. For the underlining we need to cut 1. And that is literally the information on this pattern piece. So for the piece number 20, we will cut 2 of the fabric and 1 of the underlining. So I have 1 and 2, and then I have 1 for the underlining. Now I wanted to show you this because I did run out of options. I still have a lot of the cowboy themed fabric, both of them. Actually all 3, I think. I still have horses, horseshoes, and the hats, shoes, and boots. I didn't want to duplicate that on this twice, so I decided to make a piece of fabric using fabric that I had. So I had these two, pieces left over. They were both part of a fat quarter set. And then this was some yardage that I purchased, and basically this is all I have left. So I just zigzagged these 2 on each end, so I would have enough on each end, and then I cut it out as one piece of fabric. And that's always an option, especially if you're doing a bag. Don't think to yourself, oh, I just don't have enough fabric, I don't know. Make a piece. Okay, so I can put that over there, and then we're going to read the instructions before we do anything. You don't want to be, even if you start with the proper instruction number, you could be going along with instruction number 7 on here and find out, oh, if only I had known that I was going to need to do this. For example, if you wanted to put the applique on the pocket, I'm not doing it. The applique is the heart, which is piece number 14. I'm choosing not to put the applique on. I just feel like I don't really want to. So the other option that you have though is you could just outline stitch. You know, if you could draw a heart onto the front of the pocket, then you could just do an outline, which would be kind of cute. I might do that. But that has to be done before you make the pocket, because once the pocket is made, you would be sewing through all 3 pieces rather than hiding the back stitches on the front part of the pocket. And that's true of almost every pocket. Plus it would be harder to get to, you know, the pocket once it's done and applied. So our instructions are going to tell us here for the tote bag, all seam allowances are 1/2 inch unless they are otherwise indicated. Seams are stitched on the outside, and you're going to press the seams open lightly. The reason for that is you want to be able to chenille them. So if they're all tightly compressed, 3 layers of fabric tightly compressed, it might be a little difficult to do that, you know, rubbing and pulling them open. But if you slightly press them open, they're just a little bit easier to rough up. Okay, so the next thing is to cut a piece of webbing 5.5 inches by 4.5 inches and prepare the applique. So the webbing would be what would go behind the applique, should that be what you are choosing to apply to the front part of the pocket. I'm not, so we're not going to worry about that. Zigzag close to the outer edges of the heart applique, and then it says, note, the zigzag stitching on the applique will not be shown in the following illustrations. So piece 14, they're showing attached to the front, oops, go over here, the front of the pocket right there. And I don't know if you can tell, but it shows some little cross-hatching lines which are supposed to represent the zigzagging. But then as you move through the pattern, those little cross hatchings are no longer there. It doesn't mean that they aren't there, they're just not showing them. And you'll often see that on patterns where there's a decorative something or another. They will tell you that they're not going to, or basting stitches will not be shown in the further illustrations. They'll just leave it out, but they will let you know that most of the time. Okay, so if I were going to do a little outline, over here so I can remember where I put them. And then if you want to, you can change your thread color. Since I have white in my needle, I think I will. Okay. So I need my thread to come off of the spool in a counterclockwise motion like that. Thread my machine. I have obviously switched out from the wing needle that we were using in the last video, and this is an embroidery gold. It is a 7511, which is a 130/705 HET, and it is a fairly heavy needle. It has a larger eye to accommodate the heavier specialty threads that you typically find for embroidery. It is a titanium nitride ceramic coated needle. So basically that helps with the constant motion that it's going through to penetrate the fabric. That is a kind of a new procedure that they use now. Okay, so now you can do your outline with a fancy stitch. You can do it with a zigzag stitch, however you want that to look. I'm just going to do it with a straight stitch that is somewhat tighter than I normally go. I'm using a 1 instead of a 2, which is what my default is. And I'm just going to stitch. After I trim out my thread, there we go. I love the way that looks. I did decide to cross those in the middle. I do have a little piece of thread I need to trim. Now, if you find that manipulating this, it's not lightweight, but it's not a heavyweight piece of fabric either. But if you find it's difficult to slide it, you know, to get sort of a line drawn like that with the sewing machine, I would definitely recommend either just using a piece of typing paper underneath your piece of fabric for some stability, or some tearaway stabilizer, or some wash away stabilizer. Literally a piece of typing paper would work just fine. Then you can just tear it, because you're making so many little teeny tiny holes. It will definitely perforate that piece of paper and it'll just tear right away. You won't have any issues removing it. Okay, so now I need to change my thread back. I know this is all very confusing, but you've got 3 layers of fabric, so you're going to have 2 basted together or not. And then you're going to take a third piece and you're going to stick it to all 3 of those, and you're going to baste through all thicknesses where it tells you to do that. Again, I'm not. I just found it way easier to avoid all basting. But it does help to read this because it tells you the order in which to put your pieces of fabric. So now here we're going to go to number 9, pin the underlining number 21, underlining number 22, underlining 23, and underlining 24 to the wrong side of the contrast 21, 22, and 23. You're going to notice that they have misspoken and they have misspelled a large number of the instructions in this. I find that in almost all the patterns. I don't know if it's because people are not doing what they're supposed to do in the proofreading, or if there is no proofreading. So what I would like to suggest is that that's why you just read through everything, so that if there's something you don't understand, you can spend a little bit of time trying to figure it out. Okay, so basically all we're doing is we're going to take all the rest of the pieces, we're going to get alongside of the remaining fabric sections of the upper left, which is that little square, the right side, which I think is the triangle, the upper right back, which is the small piece. It doesn't give you numbers here, so it's the small piece with the little cutout, and the pocket. And you're going to baste, which I'm not. With the backing sides together, now we get to the actual good stuff. Number 11, with the backing sides together, we are going to stitch the upper left back to the left side as shown right here. Then we're going to stitch the upper right back to the right side as shown right here. So this is that rectangle and this is the square. With the backing sides together, stitch the left and the right together. So basically we're building a little bit of a step on this small piece here and a little bit smaller step on the bigger piece over here, so that these cutouts are in the same place on both sides. Okay, so then on the outside, we're going to stitch the pocket close to the outside edges of the applique through all thicknesses. Now that is stitching, not basting. We are then going to stitch the upper edge of the pocket along the stitching line as shown. The reason for that is if we look at the picture, you can see a little bit that the top edge of this pocket is also chenilled. There's no finished edge on the pocket. So the whole thing is basically just slapped to the front, stitch, 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 which is why they gave us these stitching lines, because this is where we're going to attach this whole pocket to the front of the tote bag. So for that reason, I know that I need to decide which of these two pieces will be the lining piece of the pocket, which piece is going to be the one that's in the middle, and of course this I know is the outer piece. So this one will be turned facing the other way, because when I'm looking at the pocket I want to see this on the inside, scruffled up. Okay, so I'm going to pin these the way I want them so I don't have to do it again later. And I'm using sort of a gridded fabric, this gingham, which makes it real easy to mark. A lot of people don't like sewing with gingham because every time you cut you have to line up all these little stitches, but they're great for things like pockets. So I can see right where it needs to go because of the grid. So I'm just going to put my ruler down and then draw. And this is my stitching line that I have to follow when I'm applying it to the front of the pocket. Or I mean the front of the tote bag. Okay, so get that lined up. Get that lined up. And I do recommend, if you've never sewn with gingham, it's actually kind of fun because you can do some fabric manipulation like smocking. Even if you don't have a pleater, you can, pull up the smocking lines with your gingham, which makes it kind of fun. All right, here's this one. And just remember, with one of these friction pins, if you make a mistake, you can just go straight to the ironing board and press it away and do it again. And I think you would find it to be a great sewing notion. Alright, so now I need to grab the rest of these pieces. I know you can't see him, but Bam Bam, my dog, decided to join me today. So he's napping on my sewing room sofa. Behind me. Alright, so here's piece number 20, which is the left side of the tote. I'm going to remove these pins because I have to move the fabric pieces around. But there are markings on this pattern piece that I'm going to need, so I'm not putting this away yet. So I will see you back in a little bit. Okay guys, so I have all of the fabric pieces put together in the proper way. The stitch line on this pattern is kind of important because you're going to have 2 sets of 3 raw edges. So I'm going to have 3 raw edges meeting up with 3 raw edges. And I kind of need to make sure that everything is going to be equal, the same, lined up. But I can kind of eyeball that too. What is it? Hibiscus tea. Pretty good stuff. There we go. Some tea. Alright, so the instructions were to take care of that business, which we did. Now, if I were basting this, that's what I would have been doing at this phase. I would have taken all these pieces that I just clipped together and I would have basted them together. I'm not doing that. Okay, so, and we're going to need this piece and this piece. Set this over here. With backing sides together, stitch the upper left back to the left side as shown. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to take my stitching lines here and line them up with my stitching lines down there. The thing is, they have to be right sides together. Is that correct? Yes. I mean, wrong sides together. Not right sides together, wrong sides together. As it says in the instructions, you'll notice that they changed the terminology with backing sides together. But now when we're buying fabric and cutting all this out, what did they call it? They called it the underlining. So that's a little confusing. So that is correct though. I am stitching it with the wrong sides of the fabric. Now this, I think I need to switch. I forgot to do that. When we're creating, typically we have our right sides together so that when we open our fabric up, we don't see the seam. But in this particular project, we want to see the seam. So as you can see, now we have a whole lot of fabric. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This fabric is going to get clipped all along that edge, just little snips made all the way down, and that will become obvious as we go. Okay, so now we have this part put together. So the next step here is to stitch the upper right back to the right side. Basically the same thing that we just did here, but on those other 2 pieces. Done. And again, this will be snipped into and then ruffled up. Now with our backing sides together, I'm going to go ahead and just pull all of these clips. Okay, so what we're doing is we're taking this less wide piece that we just did, and we are going to put the backing sides, oh, there's a clip I left out, together, or as they were referred to when we were cutting all of this out, the underlining sides. Ooh, I'm off. Somehow, something is way, way off here. Why is it off? Wait. Okay guys, I'm just going to go ahead and keep filming this, even though I feel like there's been a rather large error. And I don't know if it's on the part of my cutting it out or if it's on a pattern piece error. So I'm just going to continue. I've got to find my directions fell down behind my desk in my frenzy to figure this out. So let me grab those. That's one of the fun things about sewing. If you want to figure out puzzles, if you like puzzles, this can be quite puzzling at times. Okay, the only issue I'm having is that the box bottom areas are not matching up. They're off by quite a lot all the way around the pocket. Okay. And we're going to stitch along the stitching line that we created earlier. And I'm going to just use the white thread that's in my sewing machine. And this is a construction stitch. It's not a top stitch. Three pocket pieces together, and as all the rest of the construction on this tote bag goes, this pocket will fray. All three of these pieces will be frayed out, but your pocket will be attached in the usual manner. So the top part will not be stitched down. It will be attached to the front of the bag the way you would normally attach a pocket with an open end. Even though these are all raw edges, they're supposed to be. Okay, so now we are going to put the pocket on. So I think it will go, let me just get my pattern piece. That's not it. The picture on the diagram on the pattern instructions, I'm just kind of guessing. This is awfully close. Yeah, I think I'm too close to the box bottom. So let's just slide that up, making sure we're not within 2 inches, which I don't think so. Or I mean a ½ inch. Okay. So we've guessed. We're going to pin this down in at least 3 places, and I like to do it either 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom, or 2 at the top and 2 at the bottom. I think today I will just do 2 at the top and 1 at the bottom. Sometimes it can be a little aggravating to get that bottom pocket pin in place. You just have to try. Okay. So the pocket has been attached, and we're clipping these threads. And removing all of the pins, and there's our pocket. If nothing else, it's a cute pocket. All right. So the next step is about that. You've already stitched the side, so now you're going to take the inside corner of both and pull them away from each other. Effectively, you are taking the center bottom of the bag and the seam allowance, or the seam where you stitched up the side, matching those up and pulling the cut corners away from each other. This is bothering me just a little bit. One of the things that's not going to be a problem is really the uneven pieces of fabric, because by the time we get this clipped and washed and frayed, none of that is going to show. That I can promise. Okay, so now we have the other side. There it is. We have our side seam and the bottom of the bag. And what are we going to do? We're going to take the inside cut and pull it away from the other side. And then we're going to take the bottom of the bag, the center of the bottom of the bag, and you can mark that or press it or however you want to do that, and match it up with the side seam that we just did a moment ago. Pull these two cut corners away from each other and stitch a 1/2 inch. So if we can ignore the fact that we have this big wad of fabric up here at the top, this is the bag so far. I think it's that was a happy accident. Okay, so now we got the sides done, the boxed bottom is done, and now we're waiting. Of course, we need to make the strap, which I have a feeling that's going to be a video that I'm going to pick up tomorrow because it is very late for me. I'm usually in bed. I know that sounds ridiculous, but I get up at 2:30 in the morning, you guys. Every morning, 2:30. What we're going to do as far as the strap goes, because the instructions are not making sense. You can't tell me to have one long strap and then have two straps and then one long strap and then one long strap. It's either one or it's two, but it can't be both. And one idea that I've had while I've been sitting here looking at it is kind of fun and totally different from the entire pattern. And since I've basically had to bespoke the whole thing anyway, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. And I'm going to thread it through, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. You know, you go opposing directions. So then I would have two handles, and this bag would be a little draw bag. And now you tell me that that's not just the cutest thing that you, I mean, look at this. As I was sitting here, it just occurred to me how cute this would be, kind of bunched up like that. Okay guys, so I have two pieces cut for the So I've listed the sizes for you. I did fold them in half after I did that, and they've been pressed. There we go. No, they don't want to undo. Okay. So they've been pressed after I showed you the sizes, and they are now halfway the width of the sizes that you saw. So my plan now is to do buttonholes in both pieces. All right, I'm on the last buttonhole here. Okay, so the next thing I have to do is remove the stitching from both sides, just about a ½ inch or so. And that will be fun, because if you recall, I did backstitch to lock it. I keep wanting to call this a waistband. Clearly it's not a waistband, it's just the top. It's funny. Done. So the front and the back are both done, and now all we have to do is re-stitch the side seam right here on both the front and the back that we had to undo in order to get these on. And I think I would prefer to go toward that as opposed to into the stitching that I've already done. So I'm going to just line this up. And now I'm going to lock. Okay. And now I am going to trim down the sides that I just made to match up with the side that was already made on both sides. And no, they are not even, they're not equal, and I'm not going to let that bother me. I'm so excited to see how this is going to turn out. So the next thing I need to do is make the little piece of ribbon, fabric, strap, or whatever that's going to go in and out of this yellow top. Okay, so this is the second piece of the handle, and I just wanted to show you it's 3 inches wide. I folded the two long edges toward the center, folded that in half, and now I am pressing or ironing. And now I am sewing all down the two edges that are folded and met up together first. Then I go back and I stitch along that folded edge and then right down the center between those two lines of stitching. That just gives you a little bit more control with this piece, and I'll show you that when we get to the installation of this. The reason that I chose to do 3 lines of stitching on this is that it definitely gives you, on a wider piece, a bit more control. It's not as floppy, it has a little bit more stability than you might expect. Okay, so now the way this is going to go, we have 2. So 1 is going to go so here we go. We have this, we just give it a pull, and we have 2 handles like that, and there's our little bag with a pocket. But we're not done yet, because what we have to do is cut, and I'm going to move these out of the way. I'm not going to take these out and do it all over again, but I need to expose this seam up here at the top. We're going to take a pair of sharp scissors. You don't want dull scissors for this. And just sit down, get comfortable, and cut just like this. Kind of get into a rhythm. All right, I'll be back with this finished. Good morning, guys. It's the next day. The bag is finished. I washed it after I clipped all of these seams around the pocket, on the front and the back, and on the boxed bottom edges. So it has been washed and dried in the dryer. And then on the jacket, what I did is after I got it out of the dryer after the first washing, is I just kind of roughed the fabric up like this. And there were way more of these on that jacket. I mean, it was just like, I couldn't wrap my head around how many there were. But you just kind of rough it up. And then if you want to, you can wash it again and run it through the dryer again. And for the jacket, I did do that because it was a gift and I wanted it to look complete. And it really, that second washing really kind of ruffled up the chenille edges. It's actually kind of a fake chenille. There's a process for chenille where you do it very differently than this. This is just kind of the quick and easy method, but the pattern calls it chenille, so that's what we'll call it. But anyway, I think it turned out so cute. I cannot say that this is the McCalls bag. It doesn't resemble, other than just a few of the pieces here, it really doesn't resemble it at all. I'll grab that pattern and show you what I mean. Okay. So there it is on the pattern. And this is on the back, which I know I did this at the beginning, but just for a quick recap. And then if you look at the instructions, which this would be on the first page, not. So that drawing is what it is supposed to look like. Now I am on this drawing, I am seeing 2 handles on the drawing. But the instructions and all throughout this pattern, it talks about one strap. So I think this is also a mistake. And if you look at the picture of her, it appears that she's holding one strap. I don't see evidence of two. It looks like this is just going over her shoulder and then connecting from this end to this end. It does not appear that the straps are attached to the bag the way they are on the pattern drawing. I don't think that's what she's got there. They probably had as much trouble as I did, the people that put this together. I have noticed a few of those little inconsistencies working through the pattern with both the bag and the jacket. The bag was absolutely the worst. The jacket was not that hard to figure out. The bag, whoa. But I like what happened because I like this bag. So I have the drawstring or draw straps up here at the top on this, which isn't part of the bag, but I had to do something, which gave a nice little ruffle across the top for continuity. And then you just, I'll see if I can do it like that. You just pull, and then you have this cute little boho bag that has a lot of room. I mean, it'll hold a lot of stuff. I'm looking around to see what I have in the room that I could. So this little fabric basket will fit in here quite easily. And then this little fabric basket will fit in here quite easily next to that. Oh, there's enough room in there for more stuff, but as you can see, you could put a whole bunch of stuff, like maybe even overnight items if you were going to go somewhere overnight. So anyway, that is basically the conclusion. Would I recommend this for a new sewing person who has not sewn before? Absolutely not. Someone who has an understanding of how things go together might be able to suss it out, and might do a completely different interpretation of what I did. I did notice when I was editing that I didn't have the video footage of this section right here. This is where I added fabric to the cutout on the right side. I think I mention it in the edited version. I'm not sure, but anyway, so I had to add fabric here and then cut here for this boxed bottom. It was up too high, obviously, oops, on, you know, to match up with the left side. So that was the fix there, which I think in this particular case gives this bag a little bit of personality. And I love this pocket, by the way. It's a good size. It's a nice sturdy pocket with three pieces of fabric. Make it, you know, very, it's not floppy. It's not drooping down unless I do that. So anyway, I think I received a message from Amazon that my double needle has shipped. And if it has, then I should receive it shortly. And when I do, we are going to work on some heirloom sewing techniques. So that would be the next video, unless it's going to be quite some time before that needle shows up, in which case it'll probably be either a garden tour or just some basic sewing. At this point, I'm not really sure. I really want to do another garden tour, but it's so cold outside. It is 46 degrees on June the 5th, I think today is. I mean, really? So I went outside earlier, just right when the sun was coming up, and I couldn't stand it. I had to wait a little bit longer. It was just too cold. And I'm wearing a flannel shirt on top of a t-shirt, and I'm still really not warm enough. So I hope it's warm where you are. I hope that you are able to do something fun. Today is Friday. If I don't get a video done over the weekend, then I will catch you back here on Monday, and I look forward to seeing you then. Thank you.